What kind of son puts birthday mimosas over his mother's death? My name is Ray. I'm 62 years old. I live in Henderson, Nevada, just outside Las Vegas. And 3 months ago, I lost everything that ever mattered. It happened in the kitchen. Our little yellow kitchen with the cracked tile floor and the ugly rooster clock Denise bought at a garage sale 15 years ago. She loved that stupid thing. Said it made the room feel alive. I always hated it. Still do. She died holding a spoon. We were having cereal. I had picked up some new organic crap that was supposed to be heart healthy, and she was teasing me about it, calling me a born-again health nut like I hadn't eaten bacon and eggs for the last 40 years. She was mid-sentence, something about chia seeds and hipster colon cleanses, when she just stopped. Her eyes rolled back, and the spoon clattered to the table. I thought she was joking at first. I actually laughed. Then I saw the way her body tilted sideways, too fast. Her face hit the edge of the table. The sound, I'll never forget it. It wasn't a thud. It was a sick, soft smack that made my stomach twist. I jumped up, shouted her name, shook her shoulders. Nothing. I laid her on the kitchen floor and started CPR, counting out compressions, begging her to breathe. Her lips were turning blue. I called 911. I told the dispatcher everything. The cereal, the spoon, the sound she made when she fell. I kept going with the chest compressions until the paramedics arrived. But I already knew. She was gone before the sirens ever reached our street. Our house went quiet in a way I'd never felt before. Not just empty, hollow. Like the air had been sucked out and replaced with something sharp and cruel. I walked into the living room, sat on the edge of the couch, and stared at the phone in my hand. My fingers moved on their own. Muscle memory. I dialed our only child. Mark answered on the third ring. Hey, Dad, what's up? I couldn't even form the words at first. I just breathed for a second, then said it. Your mother just died. He was quiet for maybe 2 seconds. Then he sighed. It's Lisa's birthday brunch. Can we talk tomorrow? I stared at the phone, blinking. I didn't know what to say. I just hung up. Didn't cry. Didn't yell. Didn't even feel. Just stared at the blank screen. Lisa's birthday brunch. I sat there, in a house that had stopped breathing, staring at the front door like she might walk back in. Like maybe I'd imagined it. Like maybe Denise was in the bathroom, putting on lipstick, still teasing me about cereal. But she wasn't. She was lying in the back of an ambulance, under a sheet, while our son drank champagne with his girlfriend. That was the moment I realized I didn't just lose a wife. I lost my son too. The funeral was 3 days later. Closed casket, white lilies. A black and white photo of Denise from our trip to Carmel 5 years ago, the one where her hair was blowing across her face and she was laughing like the ocean had told her a joke. She hated that photo, said it made her look wild. I picked it anyway. It was the only one where she looked like herself. The church was full. Neighbors, old friends, a couple of people from her quilting group. Even the guy who runs the UPS store showed up. Said she always remembered his name. Said she used to ask about his daughter. But Mark wasn't there. At first, people assumed he was running late. Whispers passed between pews like smoke. Did his flight get delayed? Maybe the baby got sick. I'm sure he'll be here soon. I didn't answer any of them. I just sat in the front row, next to an empty seat where my son should have been. I didn't bother explaining. The night before, I called again. Lisa answered. Mark was in the background. I could hear him, laughing at something, maybe a movie. She sounded nervous. Said they were still deciding because they had booked a non-refundable weekend getaway. Napa Valley. A wine train. I didn't say anything. Just hung up again. That morning, I stood alone in the kitchen tying my tie. The rooster clock blinked its stupid painted eyes at me. Denise would have fixed my collar. She would have told me I looked handsome even though I haven't in years. Instead, I fumbled with the buttons and tried not to break down in front of the mirror. The eulogy was short. I talked about how we met, college bookstore. She asked me to reach a book on the top shelf. I made some dumb joke about gravity and physics and she rolled her eyes. Married 6 years later, 40 years of marriage, and she still rolled her eyes when I got sentimental. I said she was funny and kind and smarter than she gave herself credit for. I said she made our house a home, that she could make grilled cheese taste like magic, that she believed in people, even when they didn't deserve it. And then I looked out at the crowd and saw Lisa's Instagram story pop up on someone's phone. I saw the screen flash just long enough to read it. Best birthday ever. Bottle with popping cork. The photo was Mark, smiling with his arm around her, champagne in hand. Sunglasses. Smug. I didn't flinch. I didn't stop speaking, but I felt something crack clean through the middle of my chest. After the service, a woman I didn't recognize approached me. Said she used to work with Denise at the hospital. They kept in touch, traded recipes, that sort of thing. She tilted her head a little, gave me that look people give when they want to say something but aren't sure if they should. Denise seemed a little stressed lately, she said gently. Mentioned she was worried about money. Something about helping your son. I blinked. Helping? The woman nodded. She didn't give details. Just said Mark had been asking a lot lately, and she was trying to keep the peace. I thanked her and shook her hand. She walked off with a plate of cookies someone's aunt had brought. That night, I couldn't sleep. I poured a whiskey, sat in Denise's old sewing room, and stared at her desk. Second drawer. That's where she kept things she didn't want moved. I opened it. Bills, birthday cards, a grocery list, and at the very bottom, her phone. I turned it on. Low battery. I clicked through the call log. The night before she died, she had called Mark. Missed call, 11:42 p.m. No voicemail. No text back. Just silence. I stared at the screen until it went black again. He ignored her. She died the next morning. He never called back. He didn't answer when she needed him. And now he couldn't even show up to bury her. That's when I knew. This wasn't just selfishness. This wasn't just a busy weekend. He had chosen this. Chosen distance. Chosen Lisa. Chosen Napa Valley over the woman who raised him. He didn't just miss his mother's funeral. He ignored her last call. And I was starting to wonder what else I hadn't seen. It started with a key. Not a special key. Not one that looked secret or old or ornate. Just a regular brass key taped to the back of our wedding photo, the one that sat on Denise's desk in her sewing room. I found it a few days after the funeral while I was dusting, trying to keep my hands busy. I must have stared at it for 5 full minutes before I realized what it was for. The locked file drawer. Denise always said it held boring paperwork, tax stuff, pension files, maybe old birth certificates. I never questioned it. We trusted each other. But now, with the silence in the house louder than ever, something told me to open it. So I did. The first thing I saw was a manila folder labeled in neat, careful handwriting. Mark transfers. I opened it and felt my stomach drop. There were printouts of bank statements going back a year and a half. Transfers. Regular ones. Some every month, some twice a month. Thousands at a time. The amounts varied 200 here, 800 there. Sometimes more. Some had little notes next to them. Denise had always been meticulous. Rent, Mark. Car repairs, Mark. Utilities, Mark and Lisa. Dental surgery, urgent, Lisa, $9,800. $9,800. Dental surgery? I had never heard a word about it. No one said anything about emergencies or pain or bills. But there it was. A payment marked, urgent, and almost 10 grand gone. And then I found the letter. It was tucked behind the folder, folded once, creased like it had been opened and closed more than once. It was addressed to Mark, in her handwriting. Mark, this is the second time you've lied to me. I believed you the first time when you said the money was for rent, but I found out it went toward that vacation. You told me this dental surgery was urgent, but now Lisa's posting spot pictures. If this is another lie, I can't help you anymore. This is the last one, Mark. I mean it. She never sent it. It didn't have a date. It wasn't signed. Just folded up and hidden in the back of a drawer she knew I'd never open while she was alive. I sat there for a long time with the letter in my hand. My throat was tight. My ears were hot. I wasn't sure if I was angry or sad or just stunned. Denise had been shielding me, hiding the truth so I wouldn't worry. While I thought we were okay, just cruising into retirement with enough savings and time for quiet mornings and grocery store coupons, she was bleeding money into a black hole named Mark. And it wasn't even about need. That's what killed me. It wasn't like Mark was broke and desperate. This wasn't about diapers or eviction notices. This was about lies, manipulation. Whatever guilt strings he used to pull, Denise must have had them wrapped around her heart like barbed wire. She didn't even tell me when she reached her limit. She wrote the warning and still gave him the money. And he repaid her with silence. She died thinking he might finally straighten out. That maybe, just maybe, the money would stop the lies. That if she helped him just one more time, he'd turn around and be the son she remembered. He didn't. He ignored her call. He skipped her funeral. And now I was sitting in a room full of evidence, not a financial stress, but betrayal. Slow, drawn-out betrayal from the one person she never wanted me to give up on. I looked down at the printouts again. 18 months of money, and not once had Mark mentioned a loan. Not once did he say thank you. All this time, I thought we were okay. I thought we were living modestly because we liked it. Because Denise clipped coupons for the thrill of saving 5 cents. Not because she was wiring our retirement into Lisa's root canal fund. But now I saw the truth. She had been covering for him. Not just shielding me from worry, but shielding him from consequences. And that ended now. Because if Denise couldn't say no, I could. I would. Mark showed up 5 days after the funeral. No warning. No apology. No flowers. Just rolled into the driveway like it was any other Tuesday, and he hadn't missed burying the woman who gave him life. Lisa stayed in the car. Engine running. I watched her through the front window. She never looked up from her phone. Her nails were bright red, and she was drinking something from a cup with a straw. Probably iced coffee, the kind she used to claim she couldn't afford. Mark knocked twice, then let himself in without waiting. "Hey, Dad," he said casually, like we were going to talk about sports. "Place looks the same." I didn't answer right away. Just sat at the kitchen table, the same spot where Denise died. He looked around, hands in his jacket pockets, like he was expecting to find the TV on and snacks on the counter. "I figured it was time I stopped by," he added. "Been a crazy week." "Crazy?" I repeated. "That's one word for it." He slid into the seat across from me. Didn't even flinch. "So, how've you been?" I stared at him for a long second. Then I asked, "Did you know your mom called you the night before she died?" That wiped the fakies off his face. His mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. "I checked her phone," I continued. "Call history. She called you at 11:42 p.m. Mark shifted in his seat. My phone was on silent. We were at the hotel. Lisa was already asleep. I didn't even see it until the next morning. I leaned back in my chair. "You didn't call back?" He shrugged. "I figured I'd talk to her the next day. I didn't know it was gonna be her last call," I said flatly. Mark closed his mouth. I stood up, walked to the counter, and picked up the manila folder. I dropped it on the table in front of him. He looked down at the label, Mark Transfers. He didn't say anything. I opened it for him, spread out the printouts. Bank statements, transfer logs, Denise's notes. I didn't say a word, just let the silence wrap around him like a noose. Then I slid the letter across the table, the one she never sent. Mark unfolded it. I watched his eyes move, watched his expression stay frustratingly calm. When he reached the bottom, he sighed and leaned back. "She didn't mean it," he said quietly. My blood pressure surged. "She didn't mean it?" I repeated. Mark nodded like this was all very rational. "She always said stuff like that when she was stressed. She never followed through. That's just how Mom was." I sat down again. My hands were clenched under the table. "You lied to her," I said. "She offered," he replied. "She wanted to help. You said the money was for rent, then for medical emergencies, for dental surgery." He shrugged. "We had bills. You went to Napa." Mark laughed under his breath. "Lisa found a deal. It wasn't like we went first class." I shook my head. He still didn't get it. "You sat in that car," I said, pointing out the window, "while we buried her. She told me not to come if I couldn't be respectful," he muttered. "And I knew if I showed up late, people would talk." "People did talk, Mark. They asked where you were. They asked if you missed your flight. You know what I told them?" He didn't answer. I said nothing, because I was too ashamed to explain the truth. He folded the letter and pushed it back toward me. "I didn't come here to fight, Dad." "What did you come here for?" I asked. "Money? To see if there was a will? To check if we had any bonds tucked under the mattress." His jaw clenched. "You think that's fair?" "No," I said, "but it's true." We sat in silence. Outside, Lisa revved the engine once. Just once. Like she was reminding him to keep it short. I stared at the man across from me, my son, the boy I raised, the kid I taught to ride a bike and help through algebra. I didn't recognize him anymore. His face was older, but it wasn't just time. It was something colder, slicker, like the guilt never sank in far enough to leave a mark. "She didn't mean it," he repeated. Like that erased it all. I picked up the letter and put it back in the folder. "Well," I said, standing up, "I do." He looked up at me. "I mean it, Mark. This was the last one. No more. No more excuses. No more money. No more pretending you're still the boy your mother believed in." He stood slower. Lisa honked once from the car. "I'll call you," he said stiffly. "No, you won't," I replied. "And if you do, I won't answer." He walked out without another word. I watched him get in the car. Lisa didn't even glance toward the house. They drove off like it was any other errand. No backward glance. No brake lights of regret. I locked the door behind them, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a father. I felt like a man who had just watched a stranger walk out of his life, and finally decided not to follow. It took me less than a week to make the call. Alan had been our family lawyer for over 20 years. He handled the closing on our first house, the paperwork when we refinanced, even the will Denise and I wrote together back when Mark was still in high school. Trusted, discreet, sharp. He answered on the second ring. "Ray," he said, his voice warm. "I was just about to call and check in. I'm so sorry about Denise. I need to update my estate plan," I said. "Today, if possible." There was a pause. "Of course," he said gently. "Come by whenever you're ready." I was there by 9 the next morning, dressed in my best shirt, freshly shaved, folder in hand. No tie. I didn't need one. I wasn't coming in as a client. I was coming in as a man who had finally made up his mind. We sat across from each other, legal pads and coffee mugs between us. "I want to rewrite everything," I told him. "I want to create a trust, one that skips my son completely." Alan raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure?" Completely sure. He gave a slow nod. And who do you want it to go to? My granddaughter, I said. Claire. Alan tapped his pen. All of it. All of it. The house. The pension. The investments. The life insurance. Every single thing. He started jotting down notes, flipping through the original documents. And if your son contests? I leaned forward. Then he loses visitation. Alan looked up. I nodded. I want that in writing. If he tries to fight the trust, if he makes one move against Claire, or the terms, then he's cut off completely. No contact, no legal rights. He hesitated. You want to attach visitation to contestation? That's right. Claire's still a minor. She's 12, but when she turns 18, she gets everything. Until then, the trust is managed by you. No loopholes, no backdoors, no emergency clauses. Alan sighed, leaned back in his chair. This is going to make a lot of waves, Ray. I hope it drowns him, I said. We worked through every detail. It took hours. Page after page, clause after clause. Alan never questioned my resolve again. By the time we were done, my hand was cramping from signing, but I felt lighter than I had in months, maybe years. Before I left, I handed him one final envelope. What's this? A letter, I said. For Claire. Sealed. She's to open it on her 18th birthday. Alan gave a slow, understanding nod. I'll add it to the trust documents. It explains everything, I added. What happened? Why I did what I did. Why she's the one who gets to carry this forward. He tucked the letter carefully into the file. You sure about all this, Ray? I stood. For the first time in a long time, Alan. Yeah, I'm sure. I walked out of his office into the dry Nevada sun and felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not grief, not even relief. Resolve. I had spent my whole life working, saving, giving. And when Denise died, I thought the worst part was that Mark didn't show up to mourn her. But it was worse than that. He used her, lied to her, bled her dry with a smile on his face. And when she reached her breaking point, he still treated her like an ATM with a heart. He thought he'd get what was left of her legacy. Thought I'd do what I always did, look the other way. But he was wrong. Because Denise may have kept quiet to protect him. But I wasn't going to. That day, I rewrote the story of our family. Not with words, but with legal ink and locked trusts and a future that didn't have Mark's name on it. The past belonged to him. But the legacy? That belonged to Claire. It happened on a Tuesday. Mid-afternoon. Sun high. Heat shimmering off the driveway. Claire showed up unannounced, school backpack slung over one shoulder, hair tied back in a loose ponytail like always. She looked taller, older. Her eyes were sharp, too sharp for a 12-year-old. Hey, Grandpa, she said, stepping inside without waiting for permission. I brought you something. She handed me a small padded envelope. My name was written across the front in thick black marker. No return address. No note. Just my name, like a statement. What is it? She didn't answer. Just walked past me into the kitchen like she'd lived here her whole life. I followed her in, sat down at the table, and peeled the envelope open. Inside was a flash drive. No label, just silver and blank and cold. I looked up. What's this? Claire pulled a can of soda from the fridge, popped it open, took a sip. Still didn't look at me. Just watch it, she said softly. I plugged the drive into the laptop. Clicked the first file. Audio only. Lisa's voice. Sharp. Hi. Angry. If you don't stop defending him, Claire, we're done. You hear me? No phone, no birthday party, nothing. If you want your precious grandpa so bad, maybe you should go live with him. The next clip played automatically. Mark this time. Flat. Tired. Look, just play nice with your mom, okay? If you want anything out of that old man, you've got to keep him happy. He'll leave everything to you if you don't screw it up. I sat there frozen, the sound of soda fizzing behind me. More recordings. 10, maybe 15 files. Claire, holding her phone in secret, capturing the truth in pieces. Some were just conversations between Mark and Lisa late at night. Complaints about me, snide remarks about Denise, snarky comments about inheritance, about manipulating the old guy while we still can. One clip had Lisa laughing after scrolling through my Facebook page, still posting about her like she was a saint. It's honestly pathetic. Then silence. Then Claire's small voice. She was a saint. No response. Just the sound of Lisa's footsteps leaving the room. The last file was a video. Grainy. Probably recorded from under a blanket or behind a closed door. Claire's voice again. Why do you keep asking him for money if you don't even like him? Mark sighed off camera. Because he's easy. That's the whole point. He thinks he's punishing me. But all I have to do is wait for Claire to age up and boom. We're in. It's just numbers. The old man won't live forever. The video ended. I couldn't breathe. I closed the laptop. My hands were trembling. Claire was sitting across from me now, soda gone, arms folded. You recorded all that? I asked quietly. She nodded. Over the last few months. I didn't know what to do with it. But then you stopped calling. Mom said you were angry. Dad said it was nothing. But I knew something was wrong. She opened her backpack, pulled out a note. Handwritten, folded like the ones Denise used to leave on the fridge. Grandpa, I believe you. I know they're lying. I'm sorry I waited this long. That's when I broke. For the first time since Denise died, I cried. Not quiet tears. Not polite sniffles. I wept. Right there at the table where my wife used to cut out coupons and Claire used to do her spelling homework. Claire didn't say anything. She just reached across the table and held my hand. You were the only one who ever told me the truth, she whispered. And I wanted you to know. I remember. I wiped my eyes. How long have they been talking like this around you? A while, she said. Mostly when they think I'm asleep. Or when they're fighting. But I started saving it after the funeral. When Dad said you were being dramatic. I knew he was lying. I stared at her. 12 years old. And already the smartest person in the entire family. Why do you bring this to me? I asked. She hesitated. Because I didn't want them to win. I nodded slowly. That night, I made 3 copies of the flash drive. One for my lawyer, one for the safe, one for Claire to hide wherever she wanted. She picked the hollowed-out base of the rooster clock, said Denise would have appreciated the irony. And as I tucked her in on the couch, her request, not mine, I realized something. Claire hadn't just brought me proof. She'd brought me peace. And for the first time since Denise died, I didn't feel alone in the fight. Because somewhere in all this mess, my granddaughter had picked a side. And it was mine. The mediation was held in a plain beige office just off the freeway. One of those sterile places with fake plants and framed prints of sailboats. As if they could calm down the kind of storm we were bringing in. Alan came with me. He had the trust documents, the recordings, and Denise's unsent letter all tucked into a folder with tabs and highlights and color-coded post-its. I hadn't asked for all that, but he said he wanted to make sure there was no confusion. Mark and Lisa arrived 10 minutes late. Lisa was dressed like she was going to a cocktail party. White blazer, heels, lips the color of fresh blood. She walked in like she owned the place. Mark looked tired, worn out, but not regretful, just annoyed. Dad, he said when he saw me. Like this was a regular family chat. Like the last 6 months hadn't happened. I didn't respond. The mediator came in, a middle-aged woman named Jan with short hair and tired eyes. She greeted everyone, explained the process, said we'd all get a chance to speak. Lisa cut her off. We're here because there's been a mistake, she said, voice sugar-coated but laced with venom. Ray's been under a lot of stress, obviously. We all have, and it's clearly affected his judgment. I blinked. My judgment? Yes, she said, still smiling. You rewrote your entire estate out of grief. We get it, but Claire's too young to handle that kind of responsibility. And frankly, you're being manipulated. I glanced at the mediator, who just nodded for me to speak when I was ready. Alan slid the folder across the table to her. These are the materials supporting Ray's decision, he said calmly. Bank records, communications, an unsent letter from his wife, and recordings. Recordings? Lisa scoffed. From your home, Alan said. Claire made them. Lisa laughed, too loud. You're joking. You think a child's voice memos are enough to change a legal document. They're not just voice memos, Alan replied. They're evidence of coercion, financial manipulation, and verbal abuse. Jan opened the folder. Listen to the first clip. Lisa's voice, sharp, cutting, unmistakable, threatening Claire, calling me a sucker. The second clip played. Mark's voice, telling Claire to play nice if she wanted money. The room fell quiet. The third clip started. Denise's unsent letter was read aloud by Alan. Lisa slammed her hands on the table. This is ridiculous. You're just bitter and old and looking for a way to punish us. Jan closed the folder. I don't think this is bitterness, she said. This is well-documented, consistent evidence. There's a pattern here. And frankly, I'm concerned. Lisa stood up. Concerned? What about me? What about the years we put up with his passive-aggressive guilt trips and favoritism? Jan held up a hand. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to step out if you can't remain calm. Lisa glared at everyone in the room, then stormed out, heels stabbing the carpet like she wanted it to bleed. Mark stayed seated. Jan turned to him. Do you have anything you'd like to say? He didn't look at me, just stared at the table. I didn't know it had gotten that bad, he said quietly. I leaned forward. My voice was steady, cold. You didn't want to know. He swallowed hard. I didn't think. I thought Mom was just being dramatic. Yeah, I said. That's what you always think. Until someone else cleans up the mess. The silence stretched. Jan folded her hands. It's clear to me that Ray acted with intention. There's no legal ground for contesting the trust without further damaging your position, especially with this documentation. If you pursue litigation, I'll be submitting a full report, including the recordings. Mark nodded slowly, didn't speak. The session ended. Outside, Lisa was pacing like a caged animal. When Mark walked out, she hissed something at him, but he brushed past her, shoulders slumped. I stayed behind, talking to Jan for a few more minutes, confirming that the documentation would be on record. As Alan and I walked to the parking lot, I saw Lisa getting into the car, slamming the door so hard the whole vehicle shook. Mark didn't even start the engine right away. Just sat there, staring at the dash. Maybe that was the first time he realized this wasn't going away. That his daughter had stood up. That the truth wasn't just inconvenient. It was permanent. He finally faced it, not with words, but with silence. And this time, I didn't fill it for him. Claire turned 18 last Thursday. I hadn't seen her since the mediation, not in person. We talked, of course, phone calls, a few video chats, some letters back and forth. She even sent me a photo once of her science fair trophy, said she did it for Grandma. But after the trust was finalized, Lisa and Mark pulled back. They didn't push to contest it, not after the mediator's warning, but they made it clear Claire was still their daughter, and they'd keep her close. Except they didn't. Not really. Because on her 18th birthday, Claire knocked on my door just after 8 a.m., clutching a worn white envelope, the one I'd sealed with Alan 5 years ago. She looked different, taller, stronger, like a person who had seen too much but survived anyway. She didn't hug me right away, just smiled. I waited 5 years to open this. We sat at the kitchen table, same spot where Denise used to read the Sunday paper. I handed her a butter knife to slit the envelope open, and she took a deep breath before sliding it through the seam. She pulled out the letter slowly, read it to herself. Her lips trembled once, but she didn't cry. When she finished, she folded it back up and looked at me with those same big eyes she used to have when she was 5 and afraid of thunderstorms. "You kept your promise," she whispered. "So did you," I said. "You held on." She nodded, then reached into her bag. "I want to show you something." It was a short video, 30 seconds, maybe. She set her phone on the table and hit play. It was her, in a courthouse office, smiling nervously at the clerk behind the glass window. "Hi, I'm here to submit a petition for a legal name change. And what would you like your new name to be?" She glanced back at the person recording, probably a friend, and then turned forward, proud. "Claire Denise Whitmore." I didn't breathe, not for a full 10 seconds. My hands were shaking before I even realized it. She reached over and grabbed them. "I wanted to tell you in person. That was the second time I cried since Denise died. Not because I was sad, not out of loss, but because for the first time in a long, long time, I felt something that had been missing for years. Pride. Pure, overwhelming pride." At her graduation that night, I sat in the front row while they read out names in alphabetical order. When they called hers Claire Denise Whitmore, she walked across the stage like she owned it. And when she turned to look at me, that smile, it was Denise's smile. Mark was there, sitting in the back row with Lisa, both dressed like guests who didn't want to be seen. He didn't clap, didn't smile, just stared. Claire didn't even glance at them. That night, we sat on the porch under the string lights she'd helped me hang back in middle school. She had her graduation cap in her lap, and her legs curled up like she was still a kid. "My roommate bailed," she said suddenly, "for next semester. I was thinking, maybe I could live here for a while, just until I find someone." I blinked. "You want to live here?" She smiled. "If that's okay. I miss quiet, and you make better coffee than the dorms." I tried to act calm, mature, reasonable, but inside, I was screaming. "Of course it's okay." "Okay, good," she said, "because I already moved my stuff into the guest room." I laughed. She laughed, and for a moment, I could have sworn I heard Denise's voice in the wind, telling me, "See? I told you she'd come back." Claire chose her name. She chose her truth. And now, she chose home. Not the house she was raised in, but the one that never lied to her. The one that never made her prove her loyalty. She chose me. It was a Sunday afternoon. Warm, bright, and peaceful. The kind of day where you let the screen door hang open and the smell of cut grass drifts through the house. Claire was upstairs, unpacking the last of her things, humming softly to herself. And then the knock came. 3 sharp bangs on the front door. I knew before I opened it. I knew by the silence between the knocks. By the way it pulled at my chest like a bad memory. Mark and Lisa. Lisa was in another one of her crisp blazers, dark sunglasses perched on her head like she was posing for a real estate sign. Mark stood beside her, hands in his pockets, looking more tired than angry. He didn't speak. Lisa did. "You need to stop this," she snapped. "No, hello. This isn't funny anymore, Ray." I stepped onto the porch, pulling the door nearly shut behind me but not locking it. I didn't want Claire to hear this. Not yet. "What's not funny?" Lisa crossed her arms. "The trust. The terms. The way you're manipulating Claire. She's 18. She's just a kid. No, I said calmly. She's the only adult in your house. Mark flinched. Still said nothing. Lisa pushed forward. You've poisoned her against us. She listened to your own words. Lisa, I replied. Remember those recordings? That was you. That was him. Lisa's voice rose. She's our daughter. No, I said, shaking my head. She's her own person, and she made her choice. She stepped closer, voice sharper now. If you don't revise that trust, if you don't give Mark what's rightfully his, we will have you declared unfit. We'll bring in lawyers, financial audits, mental health evaluations. We'll bury you in paperwork. I smiled. Just a little. You go right ahead. Her lips curled. You think this is a joke? No, I said. I think it's sad. Then I raised my voice just enough to carry through the house. Claire. Footsteps upstairs. The creak of the hallway floor. A pause. Then she appeared at the top of the stairs, barefoot, arms folded across her chest. Lisa went pale. Claire's eyes moved from her father to Lisa, then down to me. I heard everything, she said. You don't need to explain. Lisa's face twisted. Claire, sweetheart, don't, Claire said. Her voice was cold, controlled, older than 18. You threatened him, she said to Lisa. You stood on his porch and said you'd destroy him if he didn't give you money. You don't even hear yourselves anymore. Mark finally opened his mouth. Claire, we just want what's fair. Fair, she snapped. You ignored Grandma's final call. You skipped her funeral. You lied about the money. And now that you're locked out, you call it unfair. No one spoke. Claire stepped down one stair. Just one. I'm staying here next semester, she said. I'm transferring campuses. I've already filed the paperwork. Lisa blinked. You're serious. Dead serious. Mark stepped forward, like he was about to say something, but Claire held up a hand. I don't want to hear it. You had years to say something that mattered. You never did. Lisa turned to me, like I was the puppet master. This is elder abuse. You've turned her against her family. She is my family, I said. And then Claire finished it for me. No, you turned me against you. Lisa's mouth opened, closed. Mark took a step back. Claire crossed her arms and said, We're done here. I nodded slowly. You heard her. Lisa stared at us for a moment longer, like she couldn't believe what was happening, like the spell had broken and no one told her. She finally turned on her heel, stormed down the steps. Mark lingered. Claire, he said. She didn't move. I wanted to fix things, he muttered. I just didn't know how. She looked down at him like a stranger. You didn't try. Then she shut the door. And that was it. No shouting. No lawyers. No dragged-out court battles. Just one locked door between us and everything we'd left behind. Claire stood in the foyer for a moment, quiet. Then she turned to me and said, You okay? I am now. We didn't celebrate. We didn't even talk about it again. We just made dinner. Because sometimes the most powerful ending doesn't come with fire or fury. It comes with peace. And a girl choosing where she belongs. Graduation day was hotter than expected. We sat under a tent on the school's football field, surrounded by folding chairs and the buzz of cheap handheld fans. Parents squinted into the sun, scanning the rows of caps for glimpses of their kids. I had my program in one hand and a bottle of water in the other. But my eyes never left that middle row, third seat from the left. Claire. Her hair was tucked neatly under the maroon cap. Her gown swayed a little in the breeze. When they started calling names, my heart pounded louder than the applause. And then it happened. Claire Denise Whitmore. My chest swelled. She walked across the stage, calm and steady, a small smile pulling at the corners of her mouth. She shook hands with the principal, accepted her diploma, and then turned to face the crowd. Her eyes found me instantly. She smiled. Not wide, not dramatic, just enough, just ours. Behind me, I heard a polite clap. I didn't have to turn around. I knew who it was. Mark. He sat alone in the back row. No camera, no sign, no proud shouts. Just another face in the crowd. He didn't approach, didn't speak, just clapped like a stranger watching someone else's child. After the ceremony, families flooded the field with hugs and flowers. I waited near the edge, by the gate, letting the tide move around me. Claire found me in minutes. Hey, Grandpa. Hey, graduate. She held up her diploma. It's real. I grinned. Told you it would be. We drove home with the windows down. No music, just the wind and the occasional, I still can't believe it, muttered from her seat. When we pulled into the driveway, I noticed her bags already lined up by the porch. You ready? I asked. She nodded. More than ever. That night, I made her favorite, spaghetti with garlic bread and a double scoop of vanilla for dessert. We ate at the kitchen table with mismatched plates and paper napkins. Denise would have scolded me for not using the nice ones. Claire wouldn't have cared either way. Later, I stood in her doorway, watching her tuck sheets onto the bed in what used to be the guest room. Feels weird, she said. In a good way. I leaned against the doorframe. This house has been waiting for you. She looked up. It's strange. I always thought home was where you lived the longest. But now, I think it's just wherever people love you without expecting something back. I swallowed hard. You gave me a better life, she added quietly. I stepped into the room, sat on the edge of the bed. No, kiddo. You chose it. We sat in silence. The kind that doesn't press down but wraps around you like a blanket. Safe. Still. Claire stood up and crossed the room, pulling something out of her bag. Almost forgot. She handed me an envelope. The same kind I used to slip birthday cards into. I opened it. Inside was a photo, me, Claire, and Denise, taken years ago on our back porch. Denise was laughing, mid-blink. I had barbecue sauce on my shirt. Claire was holding a popsicle like a trophy. She had written on the back, "Thanks for showing me what love looks like. CDW. I couldn't speak. She hugged me, long and tight. We didn't talk about Mark, or Lisa, or what came next. We didn't have to. Claire had made her choice, not just about where she lived or what name she carried, but about what kind of legacy she wanted to inherit. Not the money, not the trust, but the love, the loyalty, the truth. And when I turned out the light and whispered good night, kiddo, I knew, without a doubt, that Denise would have been proud. Not just of her, but of me too. Legacy wasn't about wealth. It was about who stood beside you when the house was quiet, and the doors were locked, and the past couldn't touch you anymore. And mine was finally secured.